Well, it is lucky for me that hogs do not go to school in Texas. Carpe sus went hunting up in North Texas earlier this week. And those are some hogs way out there in the distance, under some oak trees on the other side of the creek, out there at about 615 yards. I had initially seen these hogs on my side of the creek. They were just along the tree line in this area, and went into the tree line as I started walking towards them. And then I noticed them on the opposite side. So I decided to come around. I thought I would get them at those trees that are off to the left. But by the time I got around to the other side of the property, the hogs were on the move. And they're out there at about 900 yards. And there is no way I'm getting to them in time before they're off property. Those will be hogs for another night. I did manage to drop a couple of skunks for the landowner that needed skunks removed, but I didn't get any video. Moving forward to the current hunt, these are what I call snuffle marks that are in this field. These are individual spots that the hog has rooted up, I'm assuming for insect larvae that are going to be under the ground there. And I noticed these after shooting the hog, but they're all over the field. That's the toe of my boot for scale, so they're not too big. Now previously I talked about with the Rix optics that we have both digital zoom, as demonstrated here, and then also optical zoom, which is kind of neat. But what I didn't talk about so much was another form of the digital zoom, and that was using picture-in-picture. Now I particularly like using picture-in-picture when you have a single hog out there and you want to aim precisely, but you want to keep a nice wide field of view in case it does run. And it's not going to run because the Power Hammer 92 grain bullets loaded by Druid Hill Armory and the Starline Brass are going to do their job. Now I'm not getting any closer at this point because I'm up against a cross fence. And so I'm just waiting for the hog to turn so that I have a good shot. Alright, here we go. Hog goes down nicely. I pan over, check the cattle. Cattle are doing what they're doing. And this hog's kicking a little too much for me, and I'm watching for head lifts, and watch right here. He's got some head lifts going on. There he goes. That's going to indicate that he's still alive and warrants another shot, and so that one's into the head. And that stops those movements, and this hog's going to be dead.
Alright, pig down.
Brass Catcher by Tactical Brass Recovery.
It is no surprise this lone hog was a boar, and it came in at 165 pounds. The bullet entered on the right side, crossed over, and exited out on the left side there, just behind the scope. This is one little fragment, one of the petal fragments recovered right next to the exit wound underneath the skin. So there will be no carpe analysis of trauma diaries for this hunt, particularly because the wound looked pretty much like the wounds that we saw in the last hunt, and what I'm starting to see is repeating performance for these bullets time and time again in hogs, so this is probably a good time for a summary as well. On this hunt, the bullet entered on the right side behind the shoulder. It broke one rib upon the entry. It probably went through a lung, but there was a lot of blood and I couldn't see what the damage was. I did feel through, and the cervical spine was damaged. In fact, it felt shattered. It then went through the muscle tissue above the scapula, where part of the bullet ended up underneath the skin and part of the bullet ended up exiting, and this is a close-up of the fragment that was recovered underneath the skin. This hog was effectively dead with this shot, just waiting to bleed out. The pattern of performance for these Power Hammer 92 grain bullets is that they tend to open fast upon entry, often just underneath the skin. They fragment at 100% of the time. There are petal fragments that are found within the channel, sometimes at the beginning of the channel, sometimes at the end of the channel, and on broadside shots, the base always over-penetrates, except in the one case where it was impacting the second hog in a twofer. Now, one of the things you may often read about when petals break off of bullets, that there will be claims that these petals then become their own projectiles, forming their own wound channels and doing all sorts of additional other damage. What I am seeing in this case is that the petals tend to snap off as they're going through the hog, and they're not really going off in any sort of oblique angles, making their own wound channels, going into different organs and whatnot. They're kind of staying right along the main path of the wound channel that's going along. They may be widening the wound channel slightly, but they're not doing any sorts of really ancillary damage that you might expect from some of the claims being made. So they are doing their job, but they're not doing anything much outside of the wound channel area that I have seen. Carpe Sus, my friends.